Welcome to You and Your Pets. I'm Jim Horton. We're here with our resident expert, Dr. Ernest Rogers of the Maplewood Animal Hospital, and we discuss a wide variety of pet issues from health to behavior to even psychology. But for this particular program, we're going to discuss traveling with your pets. Dr. Rogers, could you introduce our guest, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Horton. Tonight we're very fortunate to have Dr. Michael Kornreich of the United States Department of Agriculture, and he is from the Veterinary Division, and he is Assistant Director for Division 1, which actually includes New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. So he's one of our important assets in the United States government to help us with travel issues, protection issues, elimination of foreign diseases, and we'll discuss that a little bit later.
Okay. Well, tell me, Dr. Kornreich, what is your education and background in veterinary medicine?
My education is that I am an undergraduate degree in microbiology. I did later go on to veterinary school at Ross University. I practiced for a number of years in Georgia, the state of Georgia, and then went on to join the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
So how did you become involved with the USDA?
I think it was because I've always had a sense of public service and public interest. After some years of private practice, I looked into the U.S. Department of Agriculture for a position, and I began in the New England states as a poultry disease specialist. And after a few years of doing that, I moved on into training for management, and that's where I am now as a manager, as an assistant district director.
And it's interesting to note that a lot of my classmates have joined the USDA in different aspects because it is a new, well, not new, it's a well thought of area for veterinary medicine to get involved in. Not everyone has to vaccinate dogs like I do to be a good veterinarian, and this is a service to the country.
How different is it between private practice and being in the government as a veterinarian? I'm assuming your responsibilities are much larger now. Is that not correct?
Well, I don't know if I'd say larger, but certainly very different than being a private practitioner, whether a small animal practitioner or a large animal practitioner. Working for USDA, I feel that a big part of what we do is education and outreach about animal health, and mainly I'm talking about livestock. And we do regulatory medicine, so we don't do a lot of practice work. We're not that kind of veterinarian.
Right.
So what are your duties and responsibilities in detail as an APHIS veterinarian?
Well, I'll try to explain it, although it's very, we do so much in our department. I've done it for 9.5 years, and sometimes I tell my wife what I do, and she's still surprised. But as a manager for U.S. Department of Agriculture, APHIS Veterinary Services, I manage the field staff and administrative and clerical staff in those states that you mentioned, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Our agency has a wide range of disease surveillance, control, eradication programs, again, mainly for livestock animals. As you mentioned, we also do, a big part of our job is surveillance and for foreign animal disease, right? And we work with many agencies to do most of our missions. We very much partner with the State Department of Agriculture, and we work closely with them.
And you also have people like me, accredited veterinarians, and we depend on you immensely to help us with people who want their animals and pets to travel. And we also do livestock. Some of us do livestock, and we also help them when they have to ship animals to other places, or cattle are going to cattle shows in other countries, or horses are going to horse shows, or dogs are going to dog shows in other countries. Right. And you support us as a USDA veterinarian. I might just say that we have a slide here that Ben can put up that says, protects and improves the health, quality, and marketability of our nation's animals by animal products and veterinary biologics, by preventing, controlling, and/or eliminating diseases, monitoring and promoting animal health and productivity. And I think that slide says it all about what the Veterinary Division and USDA does.
It says a lot, right? That's our mission goals for our agency, right?
So you mentioned livestock and you mentioned cattle. Is that the predominant livestock that you're handling in your area? I mean, this is not a large, I guess Delaware, you don't handle Delaware, do you?
No, no.
Okay, because Delaware is the large chicken growing area.
It is, you bet, the Delmarva area.
Yeah, the
yes,
Delmarva
yeah,
Peninsula.
yeah.
So you're handling primarily what, cattle?
No, everything, all livestock species. We have disease control, eradication programs for all livestock animals, you name it, cattle, horses, poultry, sheep and goats.
Even wildlife.
Yes,
I mean, you get
a
involved
little
in
bit.
that.
There is a sister agency under APHIS, a sister agency of veterinary services called Wildlife Services,
Right.
and you're right, they provide a lot of mitigation for the public in terms of wildlife control.
Are there
And just
any-
for clarity, APHIS is Animal Plant Health Inspection Services.
Right, and under APHIS, there are many other programs similar to veterinary services, wildlife services, international services, plant protection, quarantine, and others.
Do you have any disease vectors that transmit from wildlife to cattle or vice versa that
Of
you have to
course.
worry about?
Of course, yes, we do. And if you'd like me to name some of those, malignant catarrhal fever, a big disease in deer these days, although it doesn't transmit to other animals, is chronic wasting disease. Influenza is a big issue.
Foot and mouth.
Foot and mouth, one of the foreign animal diseases, right. Other diseases like brucellosis.
And brucellosis is one of those diseases that veterinarians can pick up, and humans can pick up, and it shows up as blisters.
Yes.
Yeah.
And other symptoms.
Right,
You bet.
right.
Oh, brucellosis is a very bad disease in animals and when
And in
humans
humans.
get it. Yeah, it's
So
very
you're not only,
significant.
you're not only protecting the livestock, you're also, by monitoring these diseases, helping to protect people, farmers, farm dairy workers, people who actually might become in contact with brucellosis.
That's correct. We both do that. Dr. Rogers, zoonosis is a very important part of what we do as veterinarians, small animal practice, large animal practice, and even what we do with government. Yes.
So it goes back to what we say, one health. The health of humans and the health of animals are so intimately tied that we call it One Health now. And that's a tradition among veterinary schools.
That's right, yeah.
So usually, in order to do this, you have to have a fairly significant staff. What kind of people support APHIS, and not just veterinarians, but all the way down?
Well, I'm fortunate to have a great number of great people that work with me in all the states, other veterinarians, animal health technicians, as well as the administrative and clerical staff that we have in our offices. As far as supporting our programs, we work with many partners cooperatively, from the farmers, the producers, accredited veterinarians, state departments of agriculture, other federal agencies. They're all involved in our programs and what we do.
And it's interesting, in the last 3 days, I've had 3 people approach me about transporting their pets to another country. And the people I depend on in New Jersey as an accredited veterinarian, I'll mention them by name if that's okay. Melissa Reel is one. And Rocky and Roni has helped me today. These are people who, without their help, I couldn't fill out the forms. We can examine the animals, but to fill out the forms, we need these people in administration that have been very helpful to me and have always been there for me when I needed them.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. The forms can be very complicated, yes,
They can.
and that's what we do. We're here to help you get your pet, just like you help us, and we
Right.
depend on you very greatly as an accredited veterinarian for the services you do.
And I shouldn't miss Dr. Welsh, who's a veterinarian in the area. She's
I don't
also-
think we can miss any of them.
No.
You bet.
I
Dr.
may have
Welsh,
missed
Dr. Riley, yeah.
I've missed a lot, but
Yeah,
those are
Dr.
the people.
Balaga, yeah.
Those are the people that I've actually interacted with.
Well, I'm
and
excited
that's-
to say their names.
Tell me, I'm assuming there's a large education function, particularly for farmers, in what you're doing. Is that not correct?
Well, not sure where you're going with that, but yes, we as part of USDA, opposite of the regulatory side of what we do, education and outreach is very important to me about the animal diseases, about helping farmers and other producers with the animal health issues that they might have.
And how aware today is the average farmer of the variety of diseases that they have to deal with? I'm assuming that the farmer is a pretty sophisticated individual now. Is
You
that not
bet
correct?
they are. I think they are very aware, yes. And I think part of what we do is to help them be aware. I think there's some other great resources, university extensions, county extensions, that they all play a part in providing information to farmers, producers, and other folks about animal health issues, as well as many other topics.
And a lot of these things trickle down from the top with Dr. Kornreich right down to the accredited veterinarian who goes out to the farm and then discusses it with the farmer. But farmers are no longer people who just happen to be on the farm for the third generation. Most farmers have sophisticated educational requirements before they even come on. And to recognize diseases is part of what they have to do. It's not as simple as just having the cow bred and getting the milk, or breeding the cow and getting the calf and having beef. It's much more complicated than that, and I think you're absolutely right. They're much more sophisticated.
They are very educated, right? They're businesses, and
That's
so
right.
they have to have some education to
That's
be
right.
profitable and run good
Right.
Well, the
businesses.
dimensions from when I was a youth, and the farmer that I worked for next door ran 75 head of dairy cattle. Today, 75 head, you'd be broke. I mean, I'm assuming that an average farm today would be running 300, 400, and I know out in some of the western states, they're running 1,000 head.
Oh, 10,000 plus, dairy farms. But there are many, I hope so, still profitable small farms. I think they play a big role in our
Right.
agriculture of livestock.
And it's not only cattle, there's also sheep and goats and pigs. And I know out in Illinois, pigs are pretty big, and in Alabama, poultry's pretty big. So the USDA is responsible for so many species that it boggles my mind that they can keep them all straight.
What kind of dangers are involved in your job?
That's an interesting question. Well, there are dangers in our job, just like there are for you, Dr. Rogers, and some of those have to deal with just the contact that you might have with animals, and we're talking about livestock, so bigger animals can do more damage. I think maybe a good example could be that one of our oldest disease control programs is our bovine tuberculosis control programs. And it's now 100 years plus old. It's an eradication program, 100-year-old eradication program.
That doesn't speak well.
No, but tuberculosis as an insidious
Right.
disease is very hard to control, has wildlife reservoirs, and
Bird reservoirs.
can be transmitted from humans to animals, from animals to humans, and we do see that occasionally. I was going to tell you that we have had some tuberculosis outbreaks in some of our farms, some of the large farms. We've had some task forces that we've had to do in the last couple of years to test animals to find the
Right,
disease,
right.
and some of those animals can be hard to handle, and when you're testing hundreds or thousands of animals, really you have to be careful. I know that during our recent task forces that we've had for bovine tuberculosis out testing the animals, we wear hockey gear,
Yeah,
the mask,
yeah.
the pads, and even then we still sustain injuries. People-
And it's a zoonotic disease.
And we have to take a
Yes.
break, I'm afraid. We'll be right back. This is You and Your Pets. I'm Jim Horton. We'll be right back.
Television is a powerful and influential medium that allows different groups the opportunity to produce programming that directly affects their own communities. Public, educational, and government access channels ensure that all people, regardless of race, age, gender, disability, religion, or economic status, have access to local government information and the use of a public communication forum. Make sure everyone has a voice. Support your local PEG channels.
We're back with You and Your Pets and Dr. Ernest Rogers of the Maplewood Animal Hospital, and we are going to turn now to traveling with your pets. And Dr. Rogers, would you take over, please?
Certainly, thank you. Dr. Kornreich, we talked a lot about what you do, and we have a slide here that we'll just quickly say so that the individuals out there will know. Where you do inspections, you help develop policy,
Yes,
you do importation, testing,
yes.
exports, imports as part of the USDA oversight, and then emergency response. So you have quite a broad wealth of information in your head, which is probably better than what I have in my head, but certainly that kind of thing is important for our nation's security, and that's why I think we wanted you here, so people understand that veterinarians play a role in security as well. So one of the things that we talked about beyond traveling with pets was identification. So we can maybe talk about identification of pets, and a little bit different, but I think we know that we use a special microchip for pets traveling to Europe. And so we have to travel with our pets. So what other things do you see as what the pet owner should know before traveling with their pets?
Well, I think you can help pet owners a lot as an accredited veterinarian, preparing the owners and the pets for the actual travel and the safety of the animals.
Right.
What I would be involved with is some of the paperwork aspects to make sure that the animals meet some destination countries' import requirements.
Right. And so what I do is I make sure they have the right microchip, that I've examined them. We look for diseases, obvious signs of diseases, before we send them off. And that's great for pets. Horses are a little different, though, aren't they?
I think every species is a little different. When it comes to the import requirements of destination countries around the world, you got it. It's all kind of different. Much like interstate travel would be different and dependent on any individual state's regulations.
Right. And so if people are going to travel with their pets or with, well, let's leave livestock for a little later, but if they're going to travel with their pets, what kind of considerations should they have? They obviously should see an accredited veterinarian, but are there other things that you can think of that maybe from your perspective is also important?
I do. First thing I would probably mention is that all in interstate traveling within the domestic United States, all states require rabies vaccinations of the animals. Every state might be a little different about a requirement for a certificate of veterinary inspection or not. So some states require it. Some states would say that if you're only visiting the state for 30 days, you don't need it. But otherwise, every state's a little bit different. And when people ask me those questions, and as part of the federal government, we do have a great website that you can go to and get a link and find all the different states.
And we'll put that on at the end of the show.
Oh, great. Okay, great. Yeah, that's very useful information for people, I think. And I recommend that everybody go to those individual states when they're traveling to those states so that they can know what those regulations are and meet them.
Right. And so pets are, even though we think of them as just someone or another part of the family put in the back of the car and travel, we do have more considerations than that.
Yes, we do, yeah.
So now let's move on to livestock.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
it is the same that every state has different requirements for the different species of livestock,
Right.
horses, sheep, goats, cattle,
Right.
yeah, poultry.
Right.
That they all have some requirements, right? Certificate of veterinary inspection, plus or minus some blood testing for certain diseases, depending on the species of animal.
Right. So a horse would require a Coggins for interstate travel.
Yes.
And that's an important disease that most veterinarians can do, I think. It's taking blood and sending it off.
That's correct, yes.
Now, we discussed before the show, we discussed Hawaii.
Yeah.
And Hawaii's a little bit different. So
Well,
you wanted to bring some points up about that.
Well, I mentioned a couple things because Hawaii is so difficult and a little bit different than other state travels. The difficulty, I think, in traveling to Hawaii is timing everything correctly to meet their requirements. 2 rabies vaccinations, a rabies titer test, and then a waiting period after that. I would tell, if I was you and dealing with a client that wanted to travel to Hawaii with their pet, 6 months in advance, you have to start planning to go to Hawaii.
Absolutely.
No kidding.
No,
Absolutely.
months.
Yes.
They have certain rabies requirements that require that we take blood and we get titers, and they can take anywhere from 6 weeks to 3 months. And so if you don't start early enough, you find yourself going to Hawaii without your pet because you can't meet the requirements.
Right. Or if you meet them partially, what would happen is that your animal could be quarantined for a certain amount of time.
Right.
Go there with nothing, you'll be quarantined for a period of time. Better prepared you are, you can reduce that quarantine to nothing, basically, by being prepared ahead of time.
Now, I'm assuming, though, if someone is just driving through a state and they're not really stopping to those kinds of regulations don't really apply one way or the other. Is that not correct?
I believe, yes, I would say that, yes. But there's going to be an end destination state that person's going to go to.
And that's where the rules and regulations apply, is at the end destination state.
That's right. And most important for travel within the United States, for all the states, is rabies vaccination.
And for Canada. If
And
people
for
are going up for Canada.
Oh,
Yes.
Canada, of course, yes. Well, that begins international travel, right?
Correct. That
Right.
is the beginning of international travel. But one of the other things that you do is you help identify animals. So we have a slide here. It's one of the things that's being done now. I think this is a pig or a goat. No, it's a pig.
Yeah,
And
little dark, yeah.
Little dark.
Yeah.
But basically, we identify the animals, and a pig might be identified by an ear tag.
Correct, yes.
But do they use microchips in pigs, or do you know?
I think they can use microchips in any animal.
Any animal?
I don't think in pigs that happens very much, except for maybe pet pigs.
Right.
Like pot-bellied
Right.
pigs, etc. Yeah.
Right, and even though they're pets, they still have to follow the criteria for pigs, not for pets like a dog or a cat.
Right,
Is
right.
that correct?
Horses are very commonly microchipped.
Yes, yes. And so we see that importation is part of what you do. So we're moving on from pets now to, I own a zoo and I want to bring in a zebra, or I want to bring in a polar bear.
Right, right.
That's some of these animals, especially animals from countries that are less developed, third world countries, may well have a source of disease. So really, your job spans a lot more than just North America.
Yes, it does. Yes, yes. And as well as some of our sister agencies, such as international services. And our battle against foreign animal diseases, there's us, APHIS Veterinary Services, as well as some domestic agencies, state departments of agriculture. But it begins in the other countries with agencies like international services that.
So what kind of a cooperative programs do you have with international, say with various countries in Europe, with countries in Asia, et cetera? Do you work actively with their versions of the USDA, their departments of agriculture? Is that a regular liaison that you have with them?
Not myself at all. No, not at all.
Not at all.
That would be left to a different level or a different agency like the International Services Agency. I wouldn't have any communication with the foreign departments of agriculture and such. Someone else does that.
But you do have a sister agency that helps us, and that's the CDC.
CDC, I wouldn't call them a sister agency, only because they're not under the USDA umbrella. They're under the Department of Health and Human Services, and it is actually
So there'd be a third cousin?
Yeah, sure. and they are actually the agency that has the regulations for the importation of small animals. Many people think because we have to endorse off on certificates for pets traveling to other countries that we would be involved in the importation of those animals, and cats and dogs, because of the public health risks that they could pose. That's why it falls under the Center of Disease Control and Prevention.
Right.
We have about a minute and a half, so if there's
Okay.
one final question or so that we could deal with.
I think the one thing that we really want to talk about here are some of the things that come up when diseases do come into the country. And in a brief 30-second rant, if you can tell us what your responsibilities are or how you approach a disease that unfortunately might come into the country, or a domestic disease that gets out of control.
Well, very quickly, I'd say part of the policy making that we do is for the importation requirements of many different species, and I appreciate you bringing up emergency programs. It makes me think of foreign animal diseases and all the work that we do to prevent those diseases from entering this country. And that's why I wanted to give you this book. This is the Foreign Animal Disease book. We call it the Gray Book. The United States Animal Health Association has been producing this book for more than 50 years now, and it's our Bible on foreign animal diseases. It talks about all the different diseases, why they're important economically for trade markets, and no, this is yours.
Oh, well, thank you very
my
much.
gift to you. Thanks for having me on. Just,
thank you.
Talk.
Am I going to be tested?
Not at all. No.
Well, I'm afraid we've run out of time, and I want to thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today, especially since you live and work way out in Pennsylvania.
You bet. My pleasure.
If you have any questions about what you have heard and seen on this program or any other program, make sure you send your questions to maplewoodAH@comcast.net, and you will get a prompt reply. I want to thank you very much for watching you and your pets. Good day.